Welcome to the Lab of the Future demo. Today we're going to walk you through an AI-assisted qPCR workflow that is only semi-automated, and we're going to use our software to guide you through that experience and gather all the data as we go through. But first, it's worth having a little step back and asking why HighRes is presenting this kind of workflow and not a fully integrated system. So for the past 20 years, HighRes has been delivering excellence in integrated systems. We are known to be the market leader in automated workflows in the life sciences space. However, through that time, we've seen countless labs that are slightly broken. Like, they have fragmented workflows, they have siloed operations, and they also have really messy data flows. So we've seen a calling to apply our automation first thinking and our orchestration software to solve some of those challenges. And that's what we're going to show today. So we're going to use our AI assistant to both interrogate what is possible to be done in our lab and instigate a workflow that we want to run for qPCR. And then we're going to go into the lab and we're actually going to go through that workflow step by step, and then finally use the same AI assistant to do some data analysis. So here I am in Cellario software, and you can see I have the lab assistant open. The first thing I'm going to do is just ask it about what's possible to be done. So I'm going to type into it. I can speak to it in natural language, so I don't have to worry about any specific scientific terms or any knowledge about the former capabilities of the lab. And I can say, I would like to run a qPCR. What workflows are available? I'm now going to ask it to tell me a bit more detail about the workflow of interest. So I'm saying briefly summarize the /benchtop qPCR workflow for me. Now it's going to look into the details of that workflow and come back with a little bit more information about what steps it's going to take to run that workflow, so I can really understand if that is the one that I want to run today. So you can see here, it's going to talk about the high-level purpose of this workflow. It's going to use the OpenTrons Flex to do a serial dilution, then the precise drop 2 to dispense master mix, and then use the qTower to do some analysis, which just sounds perfect. That's exactly what I want to do today. If I wanted to, I could look into some greater depth information. We're not going to go through that now because we're going to commit this to an order and then go into the lab and actually run it. The last thing I'm going to do is actually create that order. So now I can use another prompt with a little bit more detail in it this time. I'm going to say I would like to place an order now for that particular workflow. I'm going to ask it to give me a title in a moment, and I want it to run one plate on the default settings. One thing we haven't really talked about is I only use Lab Assistant to really interrogate what's going on in the lab, to provide information. It can also do things. What do I mean by do things? So in this case, we're actually having it make an action. It's going to commit a workflow to the lab. I'm just going to give it a name. But it can also do things like create workflows, create protocols, create images, and even do some data analysis, which is something we're going to come back to later on. So here, finally, we can just see it's popped up saying, I have created a workflow order. This is called qPCR demo Rust with a date stamp, which is what I asked it to do. And now we have done everything that we would want to do in our office space, and we're going to progress over into the lab to carry on with that demo in the physical space. Now we're in the laboratory, and we're actually going to execute this workflow. So you'll see we have an OpenTrons Flex where we're going to carry out a serial dilution. Behind me, we have a precise drop 2, which we're going to use for dispensing the master mix. And then further along this workflow bench, we're going to also have our analytic Jena qTower 3 for doing the actual qPCR analysis. I've opened up in my lab iPad my dashboard, which you can see in my pending task is the order that I just created. If I click on that, it's now going to show me all of the steps I'm going to have to work through. And this is a mixture of what we call guided tasks or digital SOPs and automatic device controls. So every time I complete a series of manual actions, it's then going to trigger the device to actually run that operation. I'm going to say start the workflow. And you can see the first step goes blue, just telling me that I need to do something. I can go into that guided task, and the first one here is do my pre-run checks. So I'm going to start that task, prepare my reagents, check that all my labware is available, and then also check that my instruments are available. So if it's in a lab, it's really guiding me through those very specific steps I need to prepare everything to start the experiment. I can then confirm that that has been completed, and it moves on to the next step, which is also a guided task where I have to load the first instrument. So it says load OpenTrons. I start the task. It's going to ask me to place the tips on position C2. They're already there. It's going to ask me to put my qPCR plate on position D3, which is this one here. And then it's also going to ask me to put my dilution plate in. So I can just tell it that I've done each of those operations. The dilution plate was already on there, and confirm completion. And then having confirmed that, the OpenTrons will start operating of its own accord. And it's now going to carry out a serial dilution. We're not going to do the full serial dilution because that would take a little bit too long for the purpose of this demo. but it just demonstrates to you that we are controlling the opentrons. It's worth mentioning at this stage, while we're thinking about the opentrons, that we also have a collaboration with opentrons. So when I talked about the things that Lab Assistant can do in terms of creation of workflows and creation of protocols, we can extend that even further, communicate directly with Opentron's own AI, send it a natural language instead of instructions on the method for the liquid handling that I want to do, and it'll spin up a Python-based Opentron's workflow, which we can then capture and bring back into our workflow. So we got this full integration with their own AI-driven workflow building. Once this is finished, we're then going to go into the next guided step and take it over to the precise drop. Now the Opentrons is finished, we can move on to the next guided task, which is to move the plate to the precise drop. So I can move on to that, start the task. It's asking me to open the door of the flex, which we've actually got propped open at the moment, retrieve the plate, close the door, and then place the plate on the precise drop over here. And of course, as before, once I've completed that and confirmed that's ready to go, the precise drop is going to operate automatically. And all the precise drop is doing here is dispensing our qPCR master mix over the top of our serially diluted samples. So it's going to dispense a couple of microliters into every single well. Once that's finished, you'll notice behind me, the qPCR door, which is a fully automated instrument, is going to open of its own accord, ready to receive that particular plate. So it's moving through several device operations automatically back to back. So it should just do that now. So you can see the door opening on the Q tower, and then it's going to ask me to go through the manual operation of moving the plate over and into the Q tower. So again, I start my operation. If I was actually running this in a real lab, I would seal my plate and then load the Q tower. Once I've confirmed completion, it's just going to move through these last couple of tasks. So it's going to close the door and then start analysis. Finish off the workflow by doing this last guided task to remove the plate from the system, make sure it's clean for the next user. So I'm going to start that task, and then I'm going to remove the plate from the Q tower. Once I've confirmed that, the automated door on the Q tower is going to close, and we've completed our qPCR workflow. Completed that experiment, we've moved back into our office space, and we want to maybe do a little bit of data analysis. One reason why this particular way of doing things and why we see this as being the lab of the future is particularly important is throughout that entire run, I've now instructed the user on all of the operations we wanted to do, so I ensure great consistency in how things are going to be done. I've also gathered all the data about what I intended to do, what actually happened, and of course, as I showed you, the actual results data. And that can now be packaged up and sent on to another part of your digital ecosystem, or we can also interrogate that data now. So I'm going to go in and have a look at I can see my dashboard here. I can have a look at my completed run, the one that we just finished. I can see that that was all completed. And of course, I could bring up that output file. And here I could download it and then choose to do something with that in some other third-party software. But I can also do some brief analysis with our own Lab Assistant through natural language. So I'm going to open up my Lab Assistant again. And I'm just going to go through a couple of prompts here just to look, see if it can tell me what the status of that run was and what that data actually looks like. The first prompt I'm going to give it is just to ask it about whether that last workflow completed and can you show me the data that was presented by that. So if I ask Lab Assistant to do that, it's going to go and have a look through all of the back catalogue of completed workflow orders, and then it's going to look at the most recently completed one and gather that data and just show it to me as a link. And here we go. It's now pulled up the workflow order that we ran, which was Sci 103, and it can show me that same data file that we just looked at by navigating directly into the workflow. Yeah, I'm just going to do one last prompt to retrieve the data from that file and generate a little heat map, just as if I was doing some quick analysis in Excel. You can see here that what Lab Assistant's doing in the background is interpreting that natural language and actually spinning up a bit of Python code to do that interpretation and then feeding me back the results. Now it's gone through that process, we can have a look at that data. If I just scroll back up, you can see, as asked, it's now generated a beautiful little heat map of the data that came out from that qPCR instrument. And I could from there carry on, do some further analysis, or perhaps that's enough for me to interpret that data and move on to the next experiment. We just went through the entire process of generating a qPCR workflow through natural language, went through the execution in the lab through full guided task experience, which gave us maximum reproducibility, maximum traceability of everything that happened, and then we came back into the office and we did some data interpretation. If you want to learn more about this, then please get in touch and book a demo and we can go into greater depth on anything we talked about.